Have you ever wondered if piracy is a thing of the past? A relic of history confined to the pages of Treasure Island novels? Well, let's debunk this myth together. Let's start by setting the stage. We're not talking about the flamboyant pirates of the Caribbean, with their tricorn hats and parrots. We're talking about modern piracy, a gritty and grim reality far removed from its romanticized image. It's a world where high seas are not just a stage for adventure, but a battlefield. You see, piracy has evolved, much like everything else in our world. The pirates of the 21st century don't sail in galleons or carry cutlasses. Instead, they navigate in motorboats, armed with automatic weapons and rocket-propelled grenades. They don't hunt for buried treasure. Their loot is the cargo of massive commercial vessels, or sometimes the crew themselves. Piracy today is a serious global security issue, especially off the coast of Africa, where it's not unheard of for pirates to take entire ships hostage. The waters of the Gulf of Guinea, the Strait of Malacca, and the coast of Somalia are particularly notorious for these incidents. But why has piracy persisted into the modern era? Several factors contribute to this. In many parts of the world, economic desperation, lawlessness, and the lure of easy money create a fertile ground for piracy. It's not a career chosen out of romantic notions of freedom on the high seas, but out of necessity and survival. The impact of modern piracy extends far beyond the immediate victims. It affects global trade, inflates insurance costs, and demands significant resources for maritime security. It's a multifaceted problem that requires a multifaceted solution, one that addresses not just the symptoms, but the root causes. So let's unravel this enigma together. Let's delve into the world of the modern piracy, understand its nuances, and explore how the maritime community is fighting back. Contrary to popular belief, piracy isn't a relic of the past. It's a complex, modern-day problem that continues to evolve. To understand the current state of piracy, we need to travel back to the late 20th century. Back then, piracy was more of a historical relic, a thing of swashbuckling tales and adventure novels. But as we moved into the new millennium, a new form of piracy began to emerge, one that was less about treasure maps and more about survival and desperation. This resurgence was notably felt in the waters off Somalia and the Gulf of Guinea. But why these areas? The answer lies in the socio-political conditions that prevailed. In Somalia, the central government collapsed in the early 1990s, leading to a power vacuum and severe economic instability. With no effective law enforcement, the waters off the coast became a haven for those willing to turn to piracy as a means of survival. Similarly, in the Gulf of Guinea, political unrest and economic hardship created fertile ground for maritime crime. Lack of employment opportunities and widespread corruption made piracy an attractive, albeit risky, option for many. And so modern piracy began to rise. It wasn't about parrots and peg legs, but about speedboats and AK-47s. These pirates weren't searching for buried treasure, but for commercial vessels and tankers whose crews and cargoes could be held for ransom. It was a far cry from the romanticized image of pirates, but it was a grim reality for those navigating these dangerous waters. But piracy wasn't just a symptom of socio-political instability, it was also a consequence of global trade patterns. As shipping routes expanded and global trade increased, so did the opportunities for pirates. The vast expanse of the sea, coupled with the lucrative potential of cargo ships, made them an irresistible target. This new breed of pirates was ruthless and organized, employing sophisticated tactics and weaponry. They were driven not by a desire for adventure, but by a desperate need for resources and economic gain. As we can see, modern piracy didn't just appear out of nowhere, it's a product of complex socio-political factors. These conditions, coupled with the opportunities presented by global trade, have resulted in the rise of a new era of piracy. And as we'll see in the next scene, these pirate attacks are far from the stuff of folklore. They're a chilling reality of our modern world. Now that we understand its roots, let's delve into the chilling reality of a pirate attack. Picture this: the vast expanse of the ocean, a cargo ship making its way through the waves, unaware of the impending danger. Out of nowhere, a small, fast boat appears on the horizon, closing in at a startling speed. This is not a friendly encounter, it's the onset of a pirate attack. The pirates are usually armed with heavy weaponry. Think automatic rifles, rocket-propelled grenades, and even machine guns. Their boats, although small, are incredibly swift, easily outpacing the larger, slower cargo ships. Speed and surprise are their greatest weapons, catching their victims off guard. Once they've caught up to the ship, they employ grappling hooks and ladders to climb aboard. The ship's crew, often unarmed and unprepared for such an attack, are left in a state of terror. The pirates take control of the ship, and the crew becomes their hostages. This is where the human aspect of piracy comes into play. It's not just about stolen goods or commandeered ships. It's about human lives hanging in the balance. The crew, often consisting of ordinary people just trying to make a living, are thrust into a terrifying ordeal. They face the threat of violence and, in some cases, even death. The negotiation process for their release is a tense and drawn-out affair. It involves various parties, including the ship's owners, insurance companies, and professional negotiators. The pirates demand a ransom, and until it's paid, the crew remains in their custody. This terrifying ordeal can last for weeks or even months, depending on how the negotiations play out. A pirate attack is a terrifying ordeal, a stark contrast to the swashbuckling tales of fiction. It's a harsh reality faced by those who traverse the high seas, a reality that's far removed from the romanticized image of piracy we've all grown up with. Faced with this threat, how do ships protect themselves in these pirate-infested waters? Well, it's a complex, multifaceted approach, but let's start with the most direct line of defense: private security. Many shipping companies now employ private security firms that provide armed personnel to guard the ship. These guards serve as a deterrent and, if necessary, use their training to repel attackers. Yet the first line of defense is usually a sophisticated alarm system. These systems can detect the presence of small boats, even in rough seas, and automatically alert the crew. Some ships also use radar and long-range cameras to keep an eye on the horizon. If a suspicious boat is spotted, the crew can take evasive action before the pirates get too close. But what if the pirates manage to get close? This is where non-lethal deterrents come into play. One popular method is the use of water cannons. Powerful jets of water can be directed at approaching boats, making it difficult for them to get close enough to board the ship. This method is particularly effective because it poses minimal risk to the crew, while making it exceedingly difficult for pirates to carry out their plans. Other non-lethal measures include the use of bright lights and loud noises to disorient pirates, as well as barriers and razor wire to prevent boarding. Some ships even use a device called a long-range acoustic device, or LRAD, which can emit a loud, painful noise that can deter pirates. But perhaps the most critical aspect of protection lies in the preparation and training of the crew. Crew members often undergo training in evasion techniques, emergency procedures, and even hand-to-hand combat. These skills can make the difference between a successful defense and a disastrous attack. Vigilance and preparedness are the key elements to surviving the high seas in this modern age of piracy. So where does this leave us in the current state of piracy? The winds of change have certainly swept over the pirate-infested seas. International efforts to combat piracy have been ramped up in the last decade, causing a significant decrease in the number of pirate attacks. However, it's not all smooth sailing. The situation continues to evolve, and the pirate threat, far from being completely eradicated, has merely shifted and adapted to the changing tides. Ships, once easy targets, are now armed with advanced security measures. They've got everything from armed guards to water cannons, turning them into veritable fortresses on the sea. Pirates, however, aren't easily deterred. They've become more cunning, more strategic, exploiting the weak links in maritime security, and continuing their lawless pursuits under the cover of the vast, unending seas. In some parts of the world, particularly off the coast of Africa, piracy remains a pressing concern. Economic hardship, coupled with political instability, has created a fertile breeding ground for modern-day pirates. These aren't the eye-patch-wearing, parrot-loving characters of lore, but desperate individuals driven to extremes by circumstance. Their modus operandi? Taking ships hostage and demanding ransom, a high-stakes game of cat and mouse on the open waters. So what's next? Well, the fight against piracy is far from over. It's a constant battle of wits and wills, a chess match on a global scale. Governments, maritime organizations, and shipping companies continue to collaborate. devising innovative strategies to keep the pirates at bay. Yet, despite these efforts, the allure of the sea, with its promise of riches and freedom, continues to attract the desperate and the daring. The age-old narrative of piracy, of man against the mighty sea, persists in the 21st century, a stark reminder of the inherent wildness of our world. Modern piracy, far from being a forgotten issue, remains a pressing concern. It's a reminder that even in our advanced society, the lawless lure of the sea still holds sway,